Welcome to today's Explainer. Go ahead and put on your music historian hats because today we are deconstructing one of the absolute greatest success stories in the history of the music business. We're going to break down the musical, visual, and business architecture of the Supremes and dive into Motown's legendary hit-making machine. So let's jump right in and see exactly how these brilliant artists and producers built a completely untouchable musical empire.
Here is the syllabus for our explainer today. We'll be looking at Dethroning the British Invasion, the Hitsville Collaboration Machine, Anatomy of a Number One, Sequence and Sonic Glamour, Lawsuits and the Staff Pseudonym, and finally, Lessons for Aspiring Producers.
All right, Section 1. Dethroning the British Invasion, the heavyweight clash of the 1960s. To really get this, we have to establish the sheer chart authority of the Supremes. They weren't just participating in the 1960s music scene, they were dominating an era that was otherwise completely owned by British rock bands. Look at the specific dates here when the Supremes knocked the Beatles directly off the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. Late '64, Come See About Me ends a 3-week run by I Feel Fine. Just a few months later, in early '65, Stop in the Name of Love totally dislodges 8 Days a Week. And honestly, the ultimate triumph? Late 1968, Love Child dethrones Hey Jude after it had sat at #1 for a monolithic 9 weeks. It's wild. This comparison brilliantly illustrates that while the Fab Four held the overall record with 20 #1s, the Supremes were the undisputed champions in head-to-head chart combat. I mean, they achieved 5 consecutive #1 hits in just a 9-month span. That is absolutely staggering. They were literally the only group challenging the British invasion that directly and consistently. So you gotta ask, how did they do it? That brings us to Section 2, the Hitsville Collaboration Machine, inside Motown's musical assembly line. Let's step off the charts for a second and walk into Hitsville, USA, Motown's headquarters in Detroit. The founder, Berry Gordy, had previously worked at a Ford motor plant, right? Well, he actually applied that exact industrial assembly line efficiency to his music. The crucial concept here was quality control. Every Friday morning, they had these product evaluation meetings, and Gordy invited everyone, not just the producers, but the secretaries, the sales team, the whole shebang. They all voted on what to release based on the simple principle that the truth is a hit. Logic was the boss here. It was all about stripping away egos to make sure only the absolute best songs reached the public. And that ruthless quality control fed right into this brilliant 3-step collaborative assembly line. First, the legendary songwriting team Holland Dozier Holland would craft the hooks. Second, the in-house band, the Funk Brothers, were actually given the autonomy to improvise the groove and the feel. And finally, Diana Ross, Mary Wilson, and Florence Ballard, the Supremes, would interpret the vocals and elevate the material with their distinct stage presence. It was this perfect merging of composition, performance, and interpretation. Section 3, Anatomy of a Number One, the songwriting secrets of HDH. For all the aspiring producers tuning into this explainer, grab your notebooks. We are breaking down the specific musical architecture of a hit. Behind the scenes, Lamont Dozier and brothers Brian and Eddie Holland, known as HDH, were the architects of this sound. They wrote and produced 10 out of the Supremes' 12 #1 hits. 10 out of 12! But keep in mind, they were locked in a fiercely competitive environment at Motown, constantly trying to outright the other producers just to get their track chosen at that Friday quality control meeting. Look at the exact formula they used here. Eddie handled the vocals and lyrics, while Brian and Lamont handled composition and production. Musically, they were absolute masters of cyclic harmonic progressions. That basically means the chords looped in a way that elegantly disguised the repetition, keeping you hooked without you even realizing it. They built this over what's called anchored syncopation, so a really solid backbeat layered with incredibly complex syncopated rhythms. But here's the real kicker. Their sheet music wasn't totally rigid. They purposely left room for the experiential feel, letting the Funk Brothers inject their own distinct improvisational soul into the track. I think this Berry Gordy quote perfectly captures the magic of that era. Despite that strict, factory-like structure of Motown, Gordy fully acknowledged that the raw, gritty soul of these musicians collaborating in a tiny Detroit studio was the actual magic ingredient. You know, you can't just write a hit on paper. It has to be felt. Moving on to Section 4, Sequence and Sonic Glamour, crafting the visual impact. A #1 hit requires way more than just pristine audio. It needs a totally compelling visual package. Berry Gordy recognized that to cross over to a massive, largely segregated white audience in the 1960s, the group couldn't just sound great. They had to embody sophistication, class, and literal royalty. He put them through an actual Motown charm school to teach comportment, ensuring they presented a glamorous, profoundly positive image. It was a revolutionary move that fundamentally shifted American culture. Just listen to this quote from Mary Wilson. "They matched absolutely everything. Pink gowns, pink shoes, pink earrings, pink lipstick." Imagine the power of that imagery beaming through national television sets. During a time of intense racial division, this level of meticulous, regal presentation changed white America's mental picture of Black artists. They weren't just a singing group anymore. They were undeniable fashion icons. From the form-fitting, heavily sequenced chandelier gowns designed by Michael Travis to the perfectly styled wigs and high heels, their visual brand amplified their signature sound perfectly. And even the choreography was collaborative. Get this insider secret. Diana Ross revealed that the iconic hand gesture for "Stop in the Name of Love" was actually suggested to them by Melvin Franklin of the Temptations. Literally every single visual detail was calculated for maximum star power. Section 5. Lawsuits and the staff pseudonym. When the hitmakers lose their names. So, as we all know, art and business almost always collide eventually. A true masterclass has to cover the harsh realities of the music industry. I want you to consider this for a second. What happens to a hit-making machine when the creators are legally barred from using their own identities? Imagine writing the biggest hits in the world, and suddenly, because of a legal dispute, you can't even put your own name on your work. Well, that's exactly what happened to Motown's Golden Trio. Take a look at this table. If you compare the credits from the early to late 60s, Holland Dozier Holland completely vanishes. From 62 to 67, they're the ones visibly creating the magic. But due to an exclusive publishing contract with Motown's publishing arm, when things went sour, they were forced to use collective pseudonyms on their new records. They had to use names like Staff or, famously, Edith Wayne. And actually, what's crazy about this is that Edith Wayne was the name of a family friend who later became Brian Holland's wife. So what caused this fallout? Well, in 1967, the trio got into a major dispute with Berry Gordy over profit sharing and royalties. They staged a work slowdown, abruptly left the label to start their own, and triggered a massive, decade-long legal battle over breach of contract. This totally shifted their creative influence away from the Motown roster, proving that even the most perfect hit-making assembly line can be derailed in a flash by bad contracts. And finally, Section 6. Lessons for aspiring producers. Your Hitsville takeaways. What does all this mean for us today? Here is your cheat sheet, extracted directly from the Motown method. Number 1, check your ego at the door. Collaborative assembly lines win. 2, subject your work to brutal quality control. If the truth is a hit, don't force something that isn't working. 3, merge your sonic identity with an unforgettable visual brand, just like the Supremes did with their Sequence. 4, write strong cyclic structures, but leave room for that human experiential groove. And 5, for the love of music, please understand your publishing contracts before you sign away your name. To wrap up our masterclass today, I want to leave you with this final thought. Hitsville toppled the Beatles by marrying rigorous business logic with raw, collaborative soul. So look at your own creative process right now. What parts of your assembly line are holding you back from a number 1? Think about that, apply these lessons, and get back into the studio. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. You've been awesome, and I'll see you next time.